Hey guys, welcome to Black Gumbo. I have several people asking about some of the pots that I've been using, so I want to show you today how a water reservoir works. So I've got this container. This is a typical container you get from Home Depot. It's a cheap container. It'll last you maybe 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 if you're lucky. Here where the sun really bakes these containers, I get 3 years out of them, and that's about the time I need to up pot my figs anyway, every 2 or 3 years. But you'll notice in the bottom, it appears like there's no holes in there, but there are. There's some little holes there, and you can see on the other side here, there's no holes in the outside bottom. These actually are not holes. These are just little dimples that help connect this tray to the bottom of the container. And you'll see there's a tray. And that's what, about 1 3/4 inches. So this forms a reservoir. This is not a self-watering pot per se. A self-watering pot has a reservoir, but it also has a divider in it to keep your roots of your plant out of the water, and the water is wicked up into the pot by either the tips of the roots growing through the divider. It's usually a mesh or a piece of plastic mesh or a screen, or you can actually use a wick to wick the water up into the soil. And the way a self-watering pot works is you fill the reservoir, but that's not what we're talking about here. We have a reservoir that just simply gets filled through your regular watering. And so what'll happen, and I'll show you in a minute, is as you water, all your water seeps down into the soil and it collects in this bottom tray. And so you have this much water always down at the bottom of your tray, and when your roots get down here, they can use that water, and it gives you a little bit of a buffer. If you forget to water one day, or you forget to water for a couple of days, there's at least this much water down in the bottom. And if it rains, and if it rains a lot and it overflows, it's still a draining pot. The water simply drains over the side of the tray, right? Because it's the way fluid dynamics work. It fills up, and once it fills up, it starts draining out this crack here. So it's okay if there's water standing in the bottom of your pot in my area. It might not be okay in your area. And that's what a lot of people get confused about. They say, well, and I've had questions in the comments, they say, well, what about root rot? What if your plants are going to have their roots sitting down in that water? Well, it's such a small bit of water compared to the overall volume of soil in here that once the roots get down in here, if you have a little bit of root damage just down at the bottom, that's not enough to really harm your plant. Secondly, in my climate, and that's why I like these pots, in my climate, that water gets used up really quick. In fact, my plants, if I water this pot, my plant will take up everything in this pot in one day when it's the heat of the summer. Say I got a big fig tree in here, or something that's a heavy feeder like a tomato plant that's fully mature. It'll take up all that water, and there won't be any water standing at all. There'll just be some mulch down in there. I like to put a little mulch in these reservoirs, and that mulch will remain a little bit moist, and so it retains water. The other question is, what if you get a lot of rain and it overwaters your plant? Won't that standing water harm your plants? Well, the rain simply flushes the water through, because again, it's only going to keep this much in here, and the rain's going to flush out and it's going to overflow. So really, you only ever get this much water standing at any time. And if it's standing there, my plant's going to use it. And if the plant doesn't use it, it's so hot here, it's going to evaporate away anyway. And so I don't have a problem with root rot in the summer, but it does help me have a little bit of buffer against, like if I can't water that day or I can't water the next day, at least I have a little bit of peace of mind. So let me show you how these actually work so you have a visual. We'll get the water hose, which means my crazy dog is going to go out of her mind, but I'll try anyway. Let's go and fill this thing up with water. So you can see that's about as much water as I can fill in here, because the more water I put in here, it's going to slowly drain through those holes in the bottom. Hush, Phoebe. It's going to drain through those holes in the bottom, and it's going to flow out the edge of this little tray. And I'll show you, I'll swing the camera around and show you. Let me see if I can put more water in here. So you can see here, I hope you can see, the water comes out that lip. It slowly, move Phoebe, and it slowly drains out of there. And if there's flow going in here, it's going to just come right out over that lip. And so that's all the water you're going to have standing in there. is just that tray's worth of water. That's a lot of water, and in the summertime my plant's going to use every bit of that water. A big plant will use every single bit of that water by taking it up through its roots, or and plants don't just store the water permanently. I mean, they vent that water off, they aspirate that water off, and so you know, this water will be used up in 1 day, maybe 2 days max in the heat of our summers. So yeah, that's how it works. You can see that that tray down there catches the water. So there you go. That's how these reservoirs work in these pots. It's not a true self-watering pot. If you need a self-watering pot, you need a different system. This just gives you a reservoir that forms a buffer against drying out your plants. It gives you a little bit extra confidence that you're not going to dry your plants out by retaining a little moisture in the bottom. And once again, for review, in my region, in zone 9A, during the summers with a mature plant in here, I don't have to worry about root rot, because that water is going to be, all of it's going to be taken up by the plant, or it's going to cycle through there by rain action if it rains, or it's going to evaporate away in the heat of the summer. And so that just gives me a little bit of extra confidence knowing my plants will at least have some moisture there. Now, you don't have to buy one. Let me show you this. You may have seen me in some of my other videos, or other people making videos, drilling holes on the side of their bucket if they're planting in a 5-gallon bucket like this one. These holes are drilled about 1 inch up, and so that gives you a little bit of a water buffer in the bottom of these buckets. You can make your own. If I wanted a deeper reservoir, I'd drill it a little bit higher up the bucket side. So you can make that as well. And you've seen me talk about this in my planting and potting videos, like my squash and my eggplant and potting up my figs. And when I pot my tomatoes, I provide a little bit of a reservoir down there. It's just a good way to make sure your plants don't suffer in the heat of summer as much as they would if all that soil was just drained out and dried out real fast. So it helps me, and maybe it'll help you as well. Thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo. Take care. I'll talk to you next time. Please subscribe to our channel and like our Facebook page, our Instagram, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Smells like cow poop. Plants smell like cow poop then.